I went to the Gatorade Circle of Champions. You know, when you win championships, there's a lot of responsibilities that come with it. And one of those was sitting next to your dad at the Gatorade Circle of Champions. And I was kind of in awe of sitting next to him. You know, I couldn't believe it. And but I was trying to be professional in signing. And your dad's obviously, he's always picking at people. And he's signing like this, and he's talking to you. And I'm trying to keep up with him, but there's no way. He says, "Why is it damn slow?" And he, you know, he could just sign like this. And so he came up. He got a nickname for me, and I didn't know it at first. But he says, "What are you, Craven?" And I said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "Craven. What are you, Craven?" And he and then he just comes up with his name. I'm not going to tell you the name. It's going to be in my book one day, but.
What, is it inappropriate?
It is. I think so. I don't honestly know. Ask Larry McReynolds, because years later, 1996, I win the pole position cup race at Martinsville, and your dad comes across the radio and says, you know, there's always an urgency with your dad, right? And he barks over the radio to Larry, somebody on, not Larry Mack, but somebody on the crew, and Larry happened to hear it. And said, go ask Craven, blah, 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 what he has for a sway bar. And so a crew member comes down and says, Dale wants to know what you got for a sway bar. He says, Carl looks great through the corners, just launching up off the corner. And I said, well, you know, I can't tell you that. And he says, well, tell me why he calls you Craven. I said, I don't know. But your dad had an influence on a lot of people. And he had an influence on me because go back to 1991, I dominate against some really good drivers. You know, I won races in 91 against Jeff Gordon and Bobby Labonte and Kenny Wallace and the Burton brothers and on and on and on. But am I ready for the next step? I mean, you're always a little insecure. I go from that team, my own team, down south to drive the 99 car, and when I get there, I discover they don't own a set of scales. They would jack the back of the car up with a socket.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Check the stagger.
Measure from, yeah.
And I said, God, what have I gotten into? You know, I had a very small budget, my own little team, but I had a set of scales, and I lived with it. It was, you know, that was the center of which you operated from. We went to Atlanta to test. And I'm telling you, I am in trouble. Like, I'm going home because the car was so uncomfortable getting in the corner. And remember, there aren't any 1.5-mile tracks in New England. Your dad had 2 cars there the first day, and he didn't show up. Two Busch Grand National cars.
Okay.
Didn't he show up? And then the next day he showed up, and he came over to say hi, or we crossed paths, and I said, hey, can you take this thing for a spin? Because, like, I don't think I can do this. And he said, no, drive one of mine. 2 of them. Hand on heart. Like, that's really? You'd let me drive one of your cars? There's no way I'm going to do it because I don't know if I'm qualified to do it. But he said, I'll come over after lunch. And so he came over. A guy named Darrell Bryant was the crew chief. Yep. He had some relationship with Darrell. And he tried to get in the car, and he couldn't. And he said, what the hell is this, a training seat? You know, I'm a little skinny runt. And he got him to open up the seat. In the true form, Dale Earnhardt form, he threw the belts over his shoulders. He barely got them on. Like, he released them as much as they would release just to get them on. He backs out, and he goes first gear, wow, all the way down pit road. Second gear, he goes up on the old Atlanta track. Third gear, by the time he's in turn 2, and the dust is flying because he makes a real wide arc, and he's in high gear halfway down the backstretch, V6 engine, and he runs full throttle through turns 3 and 4, down the front stretch, through 1 and 2, crap flying. He's right in the middle of the track. And then he backs off. So he makes like 1 complete lap. He rolls in, and they put the window net down, and he gets out of the car, and he looks at Darrell as he's walking away and says, tighten this thing up. That kid's going to bust his ass. And it was priceless because there's nothing I could have done or said that would have influenced Darrell Bryant the way Dale Earnhardt influenced him with one lap. And this car's undrivable. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a little moment like that, and you say, all right, you can look back 20, 30 years later and say, where might I have been if I hadn't asked him to do that?
Yeah. Why do you think he did that for you?
Well, you both know the answer to that. Your dad was a very, very good person. Along with Bill Jr., Bob Bear, who I was extremely close to, your dad was the most pragmatic person that he was along those lines. And he could figure things out. And your dad was a very good person to a lot of people. He just didn't want anybody to know it. You know, after I broke my back at Talladega, as an example, he sent his plane down to pick my wife and I up. I was in Birmingham Hospital. I didn't know that I was getting on his plane. But
if you like that conversation with Ricky Craven, well, you're going to want to listen to the entire podcast. The Dale Jr. Download is available on all major podcast platforms.